Top story, 3 days to go for the Enforcement Directorate's first deadline for Vijay Mallya. But there's no sign of him yet, except on social media. The one-time liquor baron is busy disputing all of the charges, news reports, as well as criticisms via Twitter, sitting in London. But the beleaguered businessman has shown no intent to come back to India and face the law. Meanwhile, investigators are busy finding the money trail that may implicate Mallya, who now faces charges of taking money out of the country, even as his companies owe over 9,000 crore rupees to banks. Vijay Iyer is here with all the details. And Vijay, let's talk a little bit more about the ED probe. Tell us the latest, because we understand that the banks have submitted Kingfisher Airlines loan documents to the ED today.
Absolutely. What we gather from our sources in ED is that as we speak, there were around top 10 bankers, or the top 10 bankers in the terms of exposure that they had on the Kingfisher account, have already submitted the documents to ED office. Now, what ED had asked all the 17 banks of consortium who had given a loan to Kingfisher Airlines at various point of time to give every detail of the loan right from the time of inception till the last loan that was disbursed by any of the consortium of banks to Kingfisher Airlines. So as we speak, the screening of the documents has already begun of all the loan related documents that have been collected, and say very soon, by maybe as early as next week, we could see official summons being sent and officials of various PSU banks being called for questioning. But also we need to understand 5 officials of IDBI have already been sent the summons, and maybe it's this week that we could see the questioning of IDBI officials to happen to begin with. As we all know, Nedungadi and Raghunath have been questioned for 3 consecutive days, bearing the Sunday which came over the weekend. So clearly the focus is now on having a 360-degree probe. And just to tell our viewers, when it comes to Raghunath, they have narrowed down the investigations to the 900 crore loan taken from IDBI Bank, because clearly they say Raghunath had written a letter to IDBI saying that Mr. Vijay Mallya had meetings with senior officials, and that is why the loan should be disbursed. So that is one aspect that they are looking at very closely. So clearly now it's going to be a 360-degree probe, and now all the PSU banks and the officials who had disbursed the loan at whatever point of time will be held accountable and questioned very soon.
Vijay, what has really come of so far in the questioning from what you've picked up? Because the KFA CFO and UB Group's former CFO as well, Ravi Nedungadi, have been quizzed for 4 straight days.
Specifically, if I could throw some light on the questioning that happened of Nedungadi, the key aide of Vijay Mallya, and the CFO of the UB Group, what we gather from our sources that Nedungadi has been very guarded in that sense while answering. He's been elusive and very reluctant to answer specifically to the issues relating to Kingfisher Airlines, because his argument is that he was the UB Group CFO and it was Vijay Mallya and other senior officials who were running the airline. So he was very guarded in that particular answers. But nevertheless, it's not going to be easy, because we all know what clout Nedungadi had at the end of the day when it coming to running the business empire of Vijay Mallya. So we'll have to wait and see what is going to be the next strategy that the Enforcement Directorate puts in, particularly when the questioning happens of Nedungadi and Raghunath. But clearly for now the scope has increased, and now it would be more documental evidence and other money trails that would be the focus after the 3 round of questioning with CFO and Nedungadi.
Okay, stay with us, Vijay. Let's delve deeper into this story. We've got Utkarsh Chaturvedi as well joining in with more details, as we understand that the CBI has also now stepped up its efforts to corner Mallya's aides. Utkarsh, fill us in with what exactly you're picking up, because now the CBI has clearly stepped up the pedal.
Exactly. Now, what we are picking up at this point of time, this story is breaking exclusively on 18 hours at this point of time, is that Ravi Nedungadi and A Raghunath, both of them at this point of time, are into the CBI office. They are being questioned for the last 2 hours. And what we are picking up from our sources in CBI is that they are probing that whether any kickbacks were being given, or whether any political influence which came during the disbursement of loan, especially the IDBI loan. When he spoke to our sources in CBI, they were very particular about the IDBI loan, because they say that when the IDBI loan was being disbursed, Kingfisher was in a very sad state, and that is what they're really not able to digest, and that is the reason why they have called both of these CFOs after a lot of questioning by ED. Also, the one more thing which you're picking up at this point of time is that the company CBI is very soon to issue LRs through which they can they can probe the foreign assets of Vijay Mallya. This is what's going at this point of time. We are telling you for the last 2 hours, A Raghunathan and Ravi Nedungadi, both Kingfisher CFO and former UB Group CFO, are being questioned by CBI on the matter of IDBI as well as they're likely to probe other foreign assets of Vijay Mallya.
Utkarsh, those are big developments coming in, and ET now exclusive. Let's get in then. An expert voice on the same, Jain Gupta, former ED SEBI, joins in on the phone line. Mr. Gupta, thank you so much for joining in. What we're picking up, and ET now exclusive on the overall Mallya Gate issue, is now that, the CBI has taken things into its own hands as well. Apart from the Enforcement Directorate, we do have the CBI also questioning Kingfisher Airlines CFO A Raghunathan, as well as grilling former CFO Ravi Nedungadi. Let's also get in Gopal Jain with his views on the same. And I'd just like to garner your perspective as to now the CBI clearly looking for kickbacks to the banks and Mr. Gupta, and get in your views on the same as to what exactly you make of this big development.
See, it appears it is raining from all sides on Mr. Mallya and his company, because every agency has now opened its investigation. In one way, it is a welcome thing because it is going to clean the rot. But other way, it is a very disturbing sign, because if innocence will be targeted, because it is not a case that everybody who was involved into the deal was corrupt or was bad. So it is going to create some sort of a pressure on people who are honest and right. But again, to clean the rot, some sort of a surgical action is needed. And I very much welcome CBI thing, and I want them to do their job correctly and find out all the issues. Because it is not a case that the property that Mr. Mallya has bought all over the world could have been bought with the peanuts. The money would have gone from India or somewhere else. Now we have to trail from where the money went and how the money went and who were responsible. And once we start nailing people who are doing the wrong thing and making other 99 people who are honest suffer, would be a best thing for the system. I think the system needs cleaning so that going forward, we do not have such problems in future.
Move clean up by the system. Gopal Jain also joins in, and I wanted to get in your views. The CBI is probing the utilization of loans given to Kingfisher, clearly taking things into its own hands. What is it that you make of this big move?
No, I think it's a step in the right direction, because ultimately they have to get to the root of it. And you therefore have to call both the officials of the company as well as the banks to be able to figure out how the money was lent and how it's been utilized. So I think it's a welcome move, and I hope it will send out the right signals. And once the process of investigating starts, then they would obviously probably also call Mr. Mallya. And therefore, that's again what is really necessary, is to get him before the investigating agencies.
Do you think, Mr. Jain, as we were just talking a short while ago with our other expert, is that this is, a wake-up call for a lot of the other companies, as well as a cleanup in the system was much needed and a need of the hour as of now?
Well, I think we have to strike a balance, because this should not come in the way of genuine lending, which is equally important. But where there were, legal flaws, or where rules were flouted, or where it was done under pressure, obviously that has to be investigated, and that will send out the right message. But it should not be used to choke credit and capital and lending, because that is equally important for commerce and industry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just wanted to get in more perspective, Mr. Jain, as well, as to what could be the next legal course of action that could be taken by the other aides as well as Vijay Mallya right now, with respect to, given the fact that the CBI now is involved. Mr. Jain? Mr. Jain?
No, I think that, the investigation process is on. And usually the rule is that even if you go to court, court say we don't interfere.
Okay, unfortunately, we seem to have snapped that line. But if Utkarsh is still with us, I just want to find out what exactly, are some of the other details that the CBI is probing into. If we do have Utkarsh with us as well, still on the phone line, we can just garner more details. And Utkarsh, want to understand what exactly are the different angles that, the CBI and the SEBI is now probing right now in Kingfisher Airlines? Okay, Mr. Jain, Gupta is still with us. And Mr. Gupta, we also have information right now that the CBI may be issuing a letter rogatory to on the foreign assets as well. And that is something that would be fairly integral when it comes to this case as a whole, do you think?
See, I tell you, you cannot investigate case sector-wide. You have to have a holistic view. And that's why that will involve what are the properties in investment abroad, what are the properties in investment in India, and what have been the expenses. Because it is not necessary that by siphoning out the funds you would have created a property only. You could have used it for expenses also. So all these things have to be invested holistically. But I would again say that we have come to a stage, this stage only because the institutions of chartered accountant failed us, institutions of directors failed us, and somehow the banking system also did not play its role correctly, because when the funds were moving abroad, somebody should have raised a voice. Nobody raised the voice. And that is probably the problem of the competition, because if I don't do it, somebody else will do it, so better let me do it. And then I would agree with Mr. Jain and very clearly that CBI and any other investigative agency have to be very sensitive and cautious that they do not derail the entire banking system and financial system, because if everybody working in the bank becomes afraid of CBI and other actions in future, nobody will work today. And if that happens, it will be coming a very bad shock to the economy, to the government, to the country, and to everybody, including me and you. So we want that all the bankers should be given a word that don't bother anybody who is right, will never be harmed, never be touched. Because that comfort has to come from the ministry, from the agencies and everyone else.
Mr. Loona, this is Vijay Mallya joining here. If I could get you into this discussion at this point of time, when it comes to issuing a letter rogatory, how effective a step that would be from CBI at this point of time? Because we all know Vijay Mallya is already out of the country. At the same time, ED has issued summons which he is not responded to. On the other hand, there is a non-bailable warrant issued by one of the Hyderabad courts for check bounce. So how effective a tool would be this for CBI to use at this point of time? Is this the right strategy?
Well, you see, in my personal view, this kind of letter rogatory, these are basically the tools which are used in case of criminal offences, and more particularly of serious nature, Now, assuming that there is a prima facie evidence available that some kind of siphoning of a substantial amount has taken place, or there has been a money laundering kind of situation, or some serious crime is committed, yes, obviously you can take recourse to that kind of situation. But let us also understand that, the extradition treaties between the nations normally refer to the serious criminal offences, and the kind of recovery proceedings and all those matters, they are not covered by that kind of extradition proceedings. So unless, the investigating agencies are really able to establish that, yes, there is a prima facie case against this person, then only these kind of measures should be used and may become useful also.
Mr. Loona, just to add to what you are saying, if we could try and break this up into two aspects to make it much more simplify for our viewers. One, on the whole aspect of getting Vijay Mallya back to India at this point of time, we all know that he's holed up in London. So that is one aspect where the letrogatory could be used, as you're rightly saying. But on the second aspect, do you think CBI also needs to do more when it comes to the investigation aspect? Because at the end of the day, it's in July of 2015 when CBI took suo motu cognizance. Nothing has moved. Only now, because of the chance of where is Mallya, CBI is taking this particular step. Shouldn't the banks at the end of the day also be hauled up or made accountable for?
Well, you see, as I said, that is a matter of investigation, and there may be all sorts of allegations against the bank officials or against Mr. Mallya and his company, but ultimately the truth has to come out. I mean, unless properly matter is investigated and the investigating agencies come to a definite sort of prima facie conclusion that yes, there is some sort of violation, the further actions, they are really not called for. Otherwise, we'll be simply rushing from one stop to the other stop without really making much efforts to find out the real situation. And in these circumstances, I would also say that, while doing all this, they also need to keep it in mind that the officials of the banks, they are not unduly harassed, because as my other panel speakers are saying, this can send a very wrong signals in the banking circles and the industry as a whole. Because if you choke up this banking system, whereby the people are not willing to take any responsibility, then I think it is going to be a very, very serious matter.
Okay. Mr. Loona, if I could just ask you to hold your thoughts for a second, sir. We also have got Majid Memon online with us. Mr. Memon, good evening. This is Vijay here. Thanks for sparing this time. If I could ask you, sir, we have gathered that CBI is in the process of issuing letrogatory to ensure that Vijay Mallya is booked and coming back to India. How important a step this would be in this whole case? Because A, you have been observing this case for a very long time, and secondly, you have seen various other cases. How important a step this would be by CBI at this point of time?
If you take my personal view, with whatever little experience of criminal practice I have, I must tell you that because of lot of noise that is being made in media and everywhere, whole nation seems to have forgotten everything else except Mallya, and everybody is talking about Mallaya's exit and his abscondence and whatnot. I am only afraid. I'm afraid that this is a little too much, and we are trying to witch hunt somebody, whereas the man says that he has only left India for his personal visit, and in due course probably he would come back. There is no assurance that he has absconded to flee from justice. This can be known only by his conduct in a few more days. Why are we placing the cart before the horse? In fact, even if the warrants are issued against him, his lawyers may advise him to come down, appear before the court, and apply for cancellation of warrant and face the process of law. That option is still open to him. You can't just predetermine somebody's conduct and then start labeling him as an absconder and proclaim him as a person who has run away from law. Well, CBI is doing its duty because there is so much of noise nationwide. Otherwise, well, of course, he has just gone on the 2nd of March. He may be returning in another 8-10 days. We must check with him. CBI can have a dialogue with him and ask him whether he proposes to come, then let him come back and offer himself before the process of law. Why do we complicate matters by resorting to deterrent method when we are not very sure that a man is truly evading law or not?
Mr. Memon, if I could just ask you at this point of time, what you're saying, we respect what you're saying, but the fact also remains that, sir, when you speak to officials here at ED, the summons had been issued way back on Friday. Till date, as we speak, Mr. Mallya has not even acknowledged the summons issued by Enforcement Directorate for a questioning to happen on March 18. At the same time, CBI has also been saying he's not cooperating. Then in that sense, how do you say that Mr. Mallya will return to India and we should wait and watch?
Let me tell you, if ED or CBI summons a person As a citizen of India, law-abiding citizen of India, he must respond positively. And if he does not, in the sense that he doesn't present himself bodily, personally, and he may send his counsel or lawyers asking for some more time, etc., which is a natural course, which should not be taken as a defiance. And unless Mallya has told you that come what may, I am not coming, I am not pacing, then of course you are justified in resorting to deterrent procedure of law. But what I find is that Mallya has been publicly saying that I have not run away and the day I will be coming, come back. Now, when is that day coming is you have to ascertain. If it is indefinitely deferred, then definitely you are justified in proceeding, taking deterrent steps against him. That's the law.
Mr. Memon, if I could just ask you yet another question before we could let you go. At this point of time, we know that there have been not one but multiple non-bailable warrants issued against Vijay Mallya for the case of check bouncing. There have been so many cases pending in various court forums at various point of time, including that of DRT and the bank's petition in the High Court on the matter of service tax. The fact is that Mr. Vijay Mallya has not been cooperating. We all know how things have panned out in the last 6 months, or maybe the time the banks approach the DRT for recovery of money. In such a situation, if I could ask you, if you are going to advise the agencies, what is the steps that they need to take to ensure that the monies are recovered at the end of the day and Mr. Mallya's properties are ensured, that no third party rights are created on any of his properties? What is that your strategy would be?
Now see, this is very interesting and very relevant that you have asked me. The definition of cooperation with the investigating agency. What is the meaning of cooperation? ED officials, we have seen, they have done it in the case of Bhujbal also. They may have done it in some other cases also. What they feel is that if a person is brought for the purposes of interrogation, pre-arrest, he should cooperate, means he should admit or confess the crime. If he does not admit or confess the crime, he is declared as non-cooperating, which is not fair. The law doesn't require a suspect or an accused to toe the line and agree with whatever the ED officials are telling. They would say that, look here, own up. This is what you have done. The person is bound to say no. And if he's saying no because he's claiming himself to be innocent, he wants to be tried, he is not conceding before the police officer or the directorate official, he should not be termed as a person non-cooperating. One doesn't appear, well, in Mallya's case, true. If Mallya has not appeared at all, he has flouted, he has not bothered to even send his advocates or representatives and has said that I care least if you call me, then one can understand his conduct is enough evidence of his non-cooperation. This is called non-cooperation. But I don't think it is so. Now, and you talked about several warrants. Please check in India. Thousands of courts and millions of warrants are pending against several citizens. It's all in 138 cases. There were, I was told, against very big people, multiple warrants are pending simultaneously. 100 cases are filed against somebody, 100 warrants are issued. So that is not the yardstick or the, I think, the criterion for the purpose of deciding gravity of the crime. Nonetheless, against Mallya, there are serious charges, and I would advise him that rather than adopting a course of abscondence, he should come before the court.
Before proclaiming him an offender. Having said that, if I could get Mr. Loona in at this point of time. Mr. Loona, finally, before we could wrap up this discussion, if I could ask you, what is the steps that you think the bankers need to take aggressively and actively? Forget whatever they have done. We all know nothing has worked and everything is got stuck in the judiciary. What are the steps that bankers need to take at this point of time to try and get some liquidity, try and dispose of some of the Vijay Mallya assets and recover the monies?
Well, the question of attaching and selling the assets arises after the claim of the banks is determined. Now, the claim of the banks is yet to be determined by the Debt Recovery Tribunal, and unless that is determined and thereafter we do not know, the Mallya and the borrower company, they can have the right to go in appeal against that order. So there can be further appeal against that also. So what I'm trying to say is that the question of attachment and sale of assets to recover the bank's monies normally arises after the determination of the claim. and that determination is yet to be done finally by the Debt Recovery Tribunal or the Higher Appellate Authority and so on. So I think the first step is that the bank has to focus on getting the recovery certificate from the Debt Recovery Tribunal and then take the measures to see that his assets are attached. Now the question is that probably the banks do not have probably the knowledge about all his properties against which they can proceed. That is what they want from the court, that the court should insist upon Mr. Mallya to form an affidavit and give the information of what are his assets, and so that the lenders can proceed against that. So, I mean, proceeding against assets is a long-drawn process. Even if you know that these are the assets, how clear is the title of Mr. Mallya on those assets? One needs to see whether those assets are in the name of Mr. Mallya, his family members, his group companies, or some other entities. So all those issues are not easily resolved, and so getting back money after selling these assets is not an easy process, and it's a time-consuming process.
Okay, we'll let you go on that note, Mr. Loona, Mr. Memon, as well as Vijay. Thank you so much for joining in and giving us a 360-degree view of the all-important details that we're picking up on Mallya Gate, the big ET Now exclusive, that it is the CBI who has intervened in questioning Kingfisher Airlines CFO as well as the former UB Group CFO. On that note, we're completely timed out on this leg of the show. Thanks so much for watching.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.